Two neighbors, same street, same approximate income, both in their mid-40s, both working, both describing themselves as reasonably responsible with money. One of them wakes up on a Tuesday morning, checks his phone, and sees that the market dropped 4% overnight. He feels it in his chest. He opens his brokerage app, watches the number, and spends the better part of the morning distracted running calculations, second-guessing allocations, wondering whether he should do something. By the time he gets to work, he has already made 3 decisions he will quietly reverse by Thursday. The other neighbor wakes up, sees the same notification, and does nothing. Not because she is uninformed, not because she does not care about her money, but because her portfolio crossed a threshold 18 months ago that permanently changed her relationship with market volatility. She has $500,000 invested, and at that level, the math itself becomes a source of calm that no amount of financial advice or meditation could manufacture. This is not a story about discipline. It is not a story about emotional intelligence or superior temperament. It is a story about what a specific number does to your financial reality and why $500,000 is not simply twice as good as $250,000. It is categorically different. It operates by different rules. It produces a different life. My name is Anderson, and today I want to show you exactly why $500,000 is not just a milestone. It is a transformation in how money works for you, how risk feels, and who you become in relation to your own financial future. Let me start with the mathematics, because the math is where the story actually begins. At $500,000, a 7% annual return, historically conservative for a diversified equity portfolio, produces $35,000 in a single year, without a single additional contribution, without clocking in, without negotiating, without trading time for compensation in any form. $35,000 annually from a portfolio that is simply allowed to exist. Now, consider what that number means in practical terms. The median individual income in the United States sits around $40,000 a year, which means a $500,000 portfolio at standard historical returns is generating an income equivalent to roughly 87% of what the median American earns through full-time employment, while the owner of that portfolio sleeps, travels, raises children, changes careers, or does absolutely nothing at all. This is not a retirement fantasy. This is arithmetic. And the reason it matters is not that you are about to stop working or that the income is immediately accessible in the way a paycheck is. The reason it matters is what it does to every decision you make from this point forward. When your portfolio generates $35,000 a year on its own momentum, the entire psychology of financial decision-making shifts. Your salary is no longer your only resource. Your next paycheck is no longer the only thing standing between your current life and financial difficulty. You have, for the first time, a second engine running alongside your labor, and that engine does not get tired, does not call in sick, and does not require performance reviews. Here is something worth sitting with. Most people spend their entire working lives in a state of financial dependency that they never fully name. Every month, their lifestyle requires their income to continue. If the income stops through job loss, illness, a career disruption, the lifestyle stops with it, sometimes within 60 or 90 days. This is not a moral failure. It is simply the arithmetic of a life where expenses are calibrated to income, and the portfolio has not yet developed enough mass to provide any meaningful buffer. At $500,000, that arithmetic begins to change in a way that is not incremental, it is structural. You are no longer entirely dependent on your continued employment for your financial survival. The portfolio generates enough annual return that even a prolonged period of reduced income, a deliberate career transition, a period of health difficulty, a decision to take a lower-paying role that offers more meaning or flexibility does not trigger a financial crisis. It triggers a recalculation. And recalculations, unlike crises, can be managed thoughtfully. This is what financial writers mean when they talk about optionality, but most of them never anchor it to a specific number, which makes it feel abstract and indefinitely postponed. $500,000 is where optionality stops being a concept and starts being a lived experience. The options you have at this threshold are not theoretical, they are actual choices available now that were simply not available to you before. I want to show you what this looks like in a specific scenario because the abstract version of this argument is less powerful than the concrete one. Imagine you are 41 years old with $500,000 invested and a career that pays $90,000 annually. Your employer restructures and offers you a role that pays $72,000 and $18,000 reduction, but involves significantly less travel, better hours, and work that you find more genuinely engaging. Before the $500,000 threshold, that decision is agonizing. $18,000 a year is real money. It affects mortgage payments, savings rate, retirement timeline. The financial pressure of taking that reduction is severe enough that most people decline the offer and remain in the role that is quietly diminishing them because the alternative feels financially reckless. After the threshold, the calculation is different. Your portfolio is already generating approximately $35,000 annually in returns. The $18,000 salary reduction represents roughly half of what your portfolio produces on its own in a single year. The decision is not between financial security and a better life. It is between two versions of financial security, one that relies entirely on your current salary and one that combines a slightly lower salary with a portfolio that is doing increasingly significant work on your behalf. This is the career power shift that nobody talks about clearly enough. It is not that you no longer need to work. It is that you no longer need to work in exactly these conditions, for exactly this employer, at exactly this compensation level, with exactly this little leverage. The portfolio has given you the one thing that changes every negotiation you will ever have from this point forward: the credible ability to walk away. If this is landing for you so far, take 2 seconds and hit the like button. It genuinely helps this reach more people who need to hear this. Now, I need to address the trap that sits directly on the other side of this milestone, because it is where a significant number of investors make the most expensive mistake of their financial lives. $500,000 feels like an arrival. After years, possibly decades of disciplined contribution, of choosing the investment account over the lifestyle upgrade, of watching the balance grow through market cycles and personal sacrifices, reaching this number produces a psychological experience that closely resembles completion. The hard part, it feels like, is done. And that feeling is precisely what makes the trap so effective. The investor who treats $500,000 as a destination rather than a foundation will do one of several things. They will reduce their contribution rate because the portfolio feels large enough to carry itself. They will make a significant discretionary purchase, a vehicle, a renovation, a second property with carrying costs that strain monthly cash flow because they feel they have earned it. They will mentally begin spending the portfolio's returns rather than reinvesting them, which converts a compounding engine into a slow-draining account. Each of these decisions is understandable. None of them are catastrophic in isolation, but each one interrupts the compounding trajectory at the precise moment it is becoming most powerful, and the cost of that interruption is not visible immediately. It appears 10 years later when the portfolio that should have reached 1.2 million has instead reached 800,000, and the investor cannot identify exactly where the gap came from. Here is the specific mathematics of that gap. A $500,000 portfolio reinvesting all returns at 7% annually reaches $1 million in approximately 10 years and 2 months. The same portfolio, if the investor begins withdrawing the annual returns rather than reinvesting them, spending the $35,000 generated each year instead of letting it compound, reaches $1 million in approximately 18 years. The decision to treat the portfolio's income as spending money rather than compounding fuel costs nearly 8 years of financial progress. 8 years of work, contribution, and patience, evaporated by a single structural decision made in the glow of feeling like the hard part was finished. The hard part is never finished. But after $500,000, the nature of the work changes. It becomes less about adding to the portfolio and more about protecting its momentum. Protecting it from your own impulses, from lifestyle inflation, from the seductive feeling that the number you have built is large enough to absorb a few strategic compromises. It is not. Not yet. Not if you want the next threshold to arrive on schedule. And if you're finding genuine value in this conversation, consider subscribing. I make videos like this every week. No hype, no shortcuts, just honest mathematics and the psychology that surrounds it. Let me bring this to the ground with specific actions. This week, calculate your current portfolio balance and determine precisely how far you are from $500,000. Express it as a percentage, not an abstract dollar gap, but a position on a map. 70% of the way there feels different from 30%, and knowing your actual position changes how you plan. This month, examine your contribution rate and ask whether it is genuinely protected or whether it is vulnerable to the first significant disruption, a large expense, a market decline that triggers emotional withdrawal, a lifestyle decision that competes with the investment account for the same dollars. If it is vulnerable, the single most valuable financial action you can take is building the buffer that prevents disruption, not increasing the contribution itself. Before your next significant discretionary purchase, anything above $5,000, run a 40-year compounding calculation on that amount, not to make yourself feel guilty about spending, but to make the trade-off visible. Every significant discretionary purchase is a financial decision with a 40-year consequence that the price tag never displays. Seeing that consequence clearly does not mean you should never spend. It means you should spend with full awareness of what you are actually exchanging. Finally, and this is the one that produces the most long-term impact, decide in advance what happens to your next income increase. Before the raise arrives, before the bonus clears, before the freelance payment lands, decide what percentage goes directly into the portfolio before it becomes available for lifestyle expansion. The investor who automates this decision removes it from the domain of monthly willpower, where it is most vulnerable to erosion. Let me bring you back to where we started. Two neighbors, same street, same income. One checking his phone with anxiety at a 4% market drop. One setting her phone down and going about her morning. The difference between them is not personality. It is not financial sophistication. It is not luck or inheritance or a higher salary. It is a number, and more precisely, it is the understanding of what that number does when it is protected, sustained, and allowed to compound without interruption. $500,000 is not the finish line. It is the point where the race changes character, where your effort is no longer the primary variable in your outcome, where the portfolio begins to advocate for you in ways your labor alone never could, where the options available to you expand quietly but permanently. The neighbor checking his phone anxiously has not failed. He is simply not there yet. And every month he remains consistent. Every contribution he protects, every unnecessary withdrawal he declines to make, he is moving toward the threshold where his Tuesday mornings will feel different. Not because he has more money, because the money he has will have crossed the line where it began to work harder than he does. That is what $500,000 actually is. Not a destination, a shift in gravity. And once you feel it, you will understand every sacrifice that was